Coming up on the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast, we get the lowdown on inflation in Indiana. We check in on Gainbridge Fieldhouse's makeover. There's a new ingredient for economic growth in Muncie. Teresa Lubbers reflects on her 12 years leading Indiana education. We wrap up this year's legislative session. New numbers shed light on Alzheimer's in Indiana. The Indiana State Museum has a new sports-themed exhibit. Dinosaurs invade the Children's Museum, and the latest on potential big new flights in Indy. Welcome to the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. I'm Andy Ober. Hoosiers are seeing the effects of inflation in their grocery bills, at the gas pump, and more. What's behind it and what's next? Mike Hicks, director of the Center for Business and Economic Research at Ball State, joined Inside Indiana Business host Gary Dick to talk about the cause and effect.
Mike, we saw this week the Federal Reserve making a move to address inflation with an interest rate hike. Is this the beginning of something we're going to see several times more yet this year?
Yeah, I think so. They made pretty clear that they're intending to raise interest rates 25 basis points each meeting every 6 weeks for the rest of the year. So we're talking about a 1.5% to 2% full increase in their interest rates, which will bleed out into mortgage rates, any sort of additional credit card rate or financing of a new vehicle. Yeah,
we'll talk about that, Mike, in terms of the impact on the consumer here in Indiana in terms of rising rates, how that will impact, and supply and demand, a number of those issues, what the impact will be.
Right. So if you think back about 6 to 9 months ago, it looked like this could be transient inflation, but the numbers you've just read off indicate we're back into plain old-fashioned, too much money chasing too few goods inflation. So as the Federal Reserve raises rates, you would expect that to moderate. So the growth in prices would come down substantially. We're targeting 2.5%, not the nearly 8% that happened last week. And I think what we'll see as consumers will be prices aren't going to come back down. They're just going to stop rising. So we'll see gas prices moderate. We'll see the monthly change in the price of bread is going to stop, I think, here pretty quickly. This is something the Federal Reserve should be able to rein in with this, six rate hikes over this year. But if not, they'll be able to continue to do other things into another year. But I do think this spells a very aggressive step against inflation.
Yeah, and when you talk about mortgage rates increasing, nobody likes to hear that. But realistically speaking, they're going to go up, but it's going to be nothing like, years ago. Many of us remember those extremely high mortgage rates. They're still going to be historically within reason.
Right. They're now back up to 3%. So if you're, most of us were ecstatic to see interest rates at 3 or 4%. My first home was at 9% in the late 80s. So I think there are a lot of Hoosiers are going to listen to your show and say, oh, gosh, 3%, things are fine. It could well go to 4.5%. We're still talking about historically modest interest rates and borrowing costs. Nothing here that should cause consumers to back off from buying homes, RVs, or automobiles in big numbers.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that business impact. And as you look at energy costs on the rise, certainly, and I think of the RV industry in northern Indiana, which is so obviously critical to that part of the state and the entire state. What do you see as the impact there?
Right, that's a great question. I was really nervous about the RV industry. They sold 400 and some thousand in 2019, and then 600,000 last year. So that's a huge spike in their purchases. So I ran some numbers, and with gas prices rising about $2.50 from their low in 2020 to today, and with interest rates going up another 2%, that's going to knock them down maybe 50,000 units. And so we're still talking about their second best year in history. So I think the same's true with automobile manufacturing. There's still plenty of pent-up demand out there. So I don't see a year of fighting inflation as being something that puts us into a recession or even near a recession. I think this is a fairly straightforward process that we're going through from a very low price level to pretty good overall interest rates.
Hey, I want to talk about the supply chain issue. Still a big issue for a lot of Indiana companies, certainly. But you see that kind of working its way out as the year progresses?
Yeah, but there are sort of two things at this. One is just when you shut down the economy around the world for 6-8 months, starting it back up is painful. And then there's just been this excess demand over the last year. So a little bit less demand for these products, a little bit more work in catching back up. I think we'll see most of them easing. We're still going to have cars are still going to be late in the next cycle year. We're not going to see a complete recovery, but the supply chains, with the exception of what's happening in Ukraine and the global oil markets, ought to be solving themselves pretty effectively by summer.
Great perspective, Mike, and certainly the situation in Ukraine will be a wild card in all of this as well. So Mike Hicks coming to us from the Ball State campus in Muncie. Thanks. We will talk to you soon.
Good to be with you.
A small university in Greencastle has big goals. DePauw University has a new strategic plan that includes a new business school. DePauw President Lori White joined us in our Eye on Education segment.
As part of this 5-year strategic plan, and this is certainly big news, the launch of a College of Business and Leadership. Talk about the reasoning behind that, what this new school is going to be all about.
Sure. So the current and former CEO of General Mills, the founder and CEO of Angie's List, the CEO of Teach for America, the general manager of the New York Giants. The list goes on and on of folks who have graduated from DePauw and have gone on to successful careers in business. So we are formalizing what we have already done successfully for years and bringing the liberal arts formally to the study of business and leadership.
Yeah. There's got to be demand for that. I'm assuming this will be something that would be attractive from a student attraction standpoint to marry those two. DePauw's had a strong economics program and others. This kind of takes it to the next level.
It really does. And when students are searching for places that they might want to go to college, they search on particular majors and fields of study, and business is the number one area that students search for.
Yeah. In addition to the business school, you've got a creative class or creative school, right?
Yeah. The creative school. So the creative school will attract creators, innovators, entrepreneurs, students who want to use the arts writ large, music, film, creative writing, dance, theater, to create, develop, design.
Yeah. DePauw's been around for a long time. It would seem that this is a really an important time, and this reflective of this 5-year strategic plan. It's been about 1.5 years in the making. What's really, and these two new schools are key parts of that, but as you look at that overall overarching theme, if you will, through the strategic plan, what's it all about?
So we want to be a version and model of a renewed liberal arts university for the 21st century. And certainly academic renewal is a part of that. We want to offer fields of study that are cutting edge and that students are looking for and that employers tell us they want in graduates. And we also want to be a vibrant institution in terms of the social fabric. We want to be an institution that's committed to institutional equity, and we want to flourish well into the 21st century.
I know another piece of that strategic plan deals with that student experience, if you will, yes. and there's been a lot of focus on giving students out of the classroom, out of campus even experiences, and I assume that's going to be part of this vision.
Absolutely. Graduates of DePauw will tell you they have learned as much inside of the classroom as they have learned outside of the classroom, and the opportunity for our graduates to connect with our very successful alumni and focus on their leadership development and engagement is also a really important part of our strategic plan.
Yeah, we only have about 20 seconds left, Lori, but as you look at the state of higher education, in particular liberal arts institutions, your take?
Well, this is a challenging time for higher education, and we're in a very competitive market. And so our strategic plan is really about a bold and gold vision for DePauw University that we hope will excite prospective students and families today and well into the future.
New Business School at DePauw University, President Dr. Lori White, thanks very much for the perspective. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
One of Indiana's crown jewels is getting a multi-million-dollar makeover. In this week's Around Indiana, reporter Mary Rachel Redmond spoke with a woman behind the dramatic change at Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
It all started when Market Square Arena opened in 1974. A venue where Hoosiers saw music history made on stage.
Girl, you made me love
course,
McKee gets it in the
history on the court.
To Reggie for three.
Defining the boom baby era, led by Reggie Miller. But out with the old and in with the new. It opened as Conseco Fieldhouse in '99, then renamed Bankers Life in 2011. Today, Gainbridge Fieldhouse is the name, and it's undergoing a massive facelift to the tune of over $360 million.
Inside, we started from the bottom of the building and we're working our way up. So the main thing we have left to do is the balcony, and that will be this summer. We have to replace 8,500 seats, and we're building a standing room platform on one side, and then we're upgrading all the amenities on that floor, as we have done on the other levels of the building. So we're over, I would say, just over two-thirds of the way done inside.
This looks totally
this
different.
Is totally different. So this was a seating section with just an entryway out. So we took all this concrete out and opened it up. And now we've got the standing room area. Anyone in the building can come down and have a drink right here, talk to their friend, meet someone who's sitting in another part of the building, take a picture. Big scoreboard right here. The stage would be on that end if it was a concert, and just a great view. So we have one on each side here, and then we're adding more on the balcony this summer. So,
has the feedback been good?
Yeah,
thus far?
It's been great so far. I mean, I think this is what we wanted to have, something for everyone, and so this is part of something for everyone.
Yeah,
it's maybe a younger consumer, although Rick Fuson, who's our CEO, and is in his 60s, is all I'll say, said, he doesn't sit for a whole game. He wants to get up and go look at things too. Yeah, so it just depends. We have something for everyone. We wanted to create this fear of missing out. And this is part of it. I mean, you can't get this at home on your couch.
A new food court, upgraded restrooms, and concourse bars like this one.
This bar is open to anybody in the building, and you can walk right out to the front and again, have a drink, see the scoreboard, see the game, and actually see the concert, because this is facing toward the stage.
Thirsty but don't want to miss any of the action? Check out this new grab-and-go technology.
We have fast break stands that are powered by zip-ins, similar to an Amazon Go, where you tap your credit card or your mobile pay, you go in, take whatever you want, and it just charges you when you walk out. So we have 2 of those, and we're adding 2 more. So it's super fast speed of service, especially at concerts. It's been super popular.
So essentially there's no line.
Correct.
Oh, and by the way, the field house of the future is female.
We'll go to this
female-led, that is.
How often do you guys talk to each other? Like on average? Like, I'll be honest.
Every day. Every day, multiple times a day.
Rains, along with Lori Miser and civil engineer Melody Park, are the 3 in charge of the multi-million-dollar project.
The 2 of them they live this every day, and their knowledge of how all this works and has been great. And it's great that they're women, but they're the 2 best people that we could have hired.
This looks like, I keep saying this, an entirely new space.
Remember the box office?
In 1999, you took cash and you had ticket stock and you needed bulletproof glass. If you're purchasing a ticket, we're sending it to your phone. So we're not giving you physically anything, and we're cashless now. So it's all done by credit or mobile pay. It's much more of like checking into a hotel. We need to be able to look at your phone.
So when will it all be finished?
I would say in about a year, we should be looking pretty good.
Gets it to Reggie for 3.
Mary Rachel Redmond, Inside Indiana Business.
Growing leafy vegetables vertically indoors could be a recipe for economic growth in Muncie. Living Greens Farm CEO George Pastrana came on the show to talk about why the Minnesota-based company is setting up shop in Delaware County.
Hey, want to get right to this. You're making a big investment, $70 million. Look to add maybe 120 jobs in Muncie, which is big news for the economy in East Central Indiana. But let's get right to the technology, because I think it's fascinating how you grow leafy greens. Tell us all about what you do.
Sure. We grow leafy greens in a controlled environment, in a warehouse environment under LEDs, so we can grow 365 days a year and without needing to worry about seasonality or the impacts of weather and drought and all those things. We grow through a technology called aeroponics, whereby the plant's roots are suspended in air and periodically misted with a nutrient-rich water to feed the plant through its roots, and so that the plant can grow to a full-size, great-tasting, beautifully green whole head of lettuce.
Yeah, talk about how much you've got some big plans for this facility in Muncie and Delaware County. How much will you be producing in terms of the leafy greens on an annual basis?
Yeah, this is a very large facility. It's the first of many that we're going to build throughout the United States over the coming 3 or 4 years. It's a 200,000 square foot facility, and what makes it unique amongst other indoor vertical farms is that we also process our products. So we chop, wash, and bag and ship to market all at the same location. The product goes from harvest to shelf within 24 hours. And so this farm at 200,000 square feet with its associated packaging processing lines will be able to produce over 6 million pounds of lettuce a year.
Wow. Okay, why Muncie and East Central Indiana for this big investment?
You know, as we started looking in Indiana, it was one of the main targets when we started out on the search. We really found great support with the folks of Delaware County and the city of Muncie. They had a pre-built 200,000 square foot facility, well situated to highways that gets us north, south, east, west throughout the central Midwest. And they just promised to be just great neighbors, provided a lot of support, a lot of incentives that were helpful as well to help us justify the addition of 120 employees in the area.
Yeah, when you look at indoor farming, 2 big hydroponic greenhouses, massive greenhouses up in South Bend, growing as well. George, what's really driving this really movement? You know, a lot of activity in this space for the indoor farming.
You know, I'd say that over the past decade or two, you see consumer preferences and the food that they want to eat changing dramatically. You know, you hear the terms sustainable, you hear the terms local, farm to fork, and CEA, controlled environment agriculture, or indoor vertical farming, really delivers on a lot of it. We grow here at Living Greens Farm without the benefit of pesticides, herbicides. All of our products are non-GMO. We can go from harvest to shelf at your local retailer within 24 hours. Wow. Consumers really appreciate having this great locally grown product there at their fingertips. Most of the majority of leafy greens in the United States are grown in California and in Arizona. So if you're living in Indianapolis, it takes a long time for that product to get to your refrigerator.
Living Green is a farm, a big investment in Muncie and Delaware County. George Pastrana, the CEO of the company from Minnesota, thanks very much. And again, welcome to Indiana.
Thank you very much. We're very excited to be there.
All right.
Take care.
After more than 12 years as Indiana's Commissioner for Higher Education, Teresa Lubbers is stepping down. She's one of the longest-serving higher education executive officers in the country. Lubbers joined us to reflect on her time in office.
Let's get right to it. You had your annual State of Higher Education address last month, and I thought it was interesting. A real theme there was the imperative, in your view, to transform higher education to meet the diverse needs of learners and a changing industry. Right?
Absolutely. I believe that, higher education is transformative. I'm a first-generation college graduate. I know how it was transformative for my life. At the same time, we really need to think about higher education as a transform system as well. At a time when we're asking more people to come back and engage in higher education, we need to make sure they can afford it. We need to make sure it's relevant to what they want to do. And all of those issues are driving changes in higher education. There's
been a lot of change in higher education, certainly in your 13 years on the job. How would you assess the state of higher education in Indiana and maybe some of the distinct changes that have taken place? Well, you referred to the big goal, the 60% goal, which is sort of our North Star, making sure that 60% of Hoosiers have a quality credential beyond high school. That's not necessarily a 4-year degree, a 2-year degree, a quality certificate, or industry certification. When we started calculating that in 2008, we were at a little over 33%. We're now at 48.3%, so we've seen about a 15% increase, which is moving us in the right direction. That goal is a 2025 goal, so to get to 60%, we're going to have to do a better job with students who haven't been fully engaged in higher education in the past. It's going to be a challenge at a time when we're seeing a decrease in college-going rates. At the same time, we know that almost all of the new jobs
require some sort of education beyond high school, and we need to make sure we're not leaving people behind.
Yeah, and that connection between education and workforce and economic development seems to be closer and tighter than ever before.
The lines are blurring, and that's good news. So whether it's through internships or work-based learning with employers, whether it's higher education listening to the needs of employers in terms of what the curriculum needs to look like, we have to be flexible. We need to respond to that. You see this in the area of technology. Cybersecurity is a perfect example. You didn't have those kind of degrees before. We need them now.
Yeah. As you look back on your tenure as commissioner, I mean, there are lots of things I know you can point to. Is there one accomplishment you're most proud of or would like to point to?
Well, under the sort of the umbrella of building a student-centered system of higher education, there are many things that we would talk about. But making sure that we have a system that's affordable. Our 21st Century Scholars Program. We actually have a metric that 100% of our degrees would have embedded career relevance. But I think overall, this focus on making sure that higher education is there to, in almost a consumer-driven way, build the needs, meet the needs of students.
Yeah.
I think we're doing a better job of that than we've ever done before.
Looking ahead to your successor, Chris Lowry, the challenges, opportunities, what do you see as the future, the real opportunities in higher education going forward here in Indiana?
Well, I think addressing these changing demographics will be important so that, in fact, we're making sure that all students have the opportunity for higher education. I think the sobering statistic that I would share today is that we have seen in the last 5 years, we've gone from 65% of young high school graduates going on to higher education to 59%. That's especially reflected in men. And we're soon to come out with our next report, which will show a continued decrease in the college going rate. So we have to address that by making higher education more affordable and more relevant. We also have to bring back adults who need to be reskilled and retrained for the changing jobs. The idea that you get a credential and you're set for the rest of your life is highly unlikely, and that means that higher education has to be welcoming to all students.
All right, outgoing Commissioner for Higher Education, Teresa Lubbers. Teresa, thanks so much. Thanks for your service as well. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
All right.
Remember, you can catch Inside Indiana Business Television on stations throughout the state every weekend. Head to InsideIndianaBusiness.com to check listings. Tax cuts and attracting remote workers to Indiana. Those are two of the big issues state lawmakers tackled during the recently completed legislative session. Indiana Chamber of Commerce President Kevin Brenniger joined us with a rundown.
I know you've got a smile on your face, but at the beginning of the session, you were a little concerned about where things were going from a business perspective.
Yeah, it was very ominous to start really back in November with what was proposed to be a one-day special session to pass a anti-vaccination bill that really would have interfered with businesses' abilities to set their own working conditions and make vaccination policies. Ultimately, that bill pretty much went by the wayside, but it was a tough start, and then there were many anti-business bills filed that we had to play defense on in the first half of the session. But in the end, none of the bills we opposed became law, and many positive things, including a major tax reduction using some of the excess state revenues, and a new modernized economic development toolkit for IEDC.
I want to talk about some of those, but first, one thing that didn't happen was not passing a repeal of what you call an anti-competitive tax.
Yes, and that's the 30% depreciation floor for property tax purposes on business machinery and equipment, which says even if your property's equipment is depreciated, say down to 10% of its original value, you have to pay tax as if it's still worth 30%. The property tax system is based on you pay what the property is worth, and so this is completely unfair and anti-competitive. Yep. And unfortunately, the Senate majority on the Senate side would not budge on that. And so that unfair, inappropriate tax is still left in place.
Let's talk about the positives that you described, tax cuts in public finance.
Yes, the House Bill 1002 includes an elimination of the gross receipts tax on your utility bills. That will benefit all utility customers, individuals, residential, and businesses, particularly those manufacturers that are heavy users of electricity and water.
Yep. Indiana Economic Development Corporation, their toolkit of incentives got a little better?
It did. They had some good proposals, and we lent our shoulder to the wheel to push Senate Bill 361 across the line. They'll give them more flexibility on how they use their fund, has a film and media tax credit, and also establishes more of a deal-making pool
Yeah.
that will help them compete in this intensely competitive market for business investment and jobs.
Yeah, I know we've been trying to get that film tax credit for
Yes.
a while. Remote worker attraction and retention, this is becoming a big issue.
Yes, it is. Last week, it was announced that Indiana's unemployment rate is down to 2.4%. We have way more jobs open than we have job seekers. We need to be able to attract and retain the talent that we have, and we think this tool will help, as well as the part that was Senate Bill 4 that got rolled into this big economic development bill, which gives local governments the flexibility to use unused funds in certain accounts for a talent attraction and retention efforts.
Hey, one more real quick,
Yes, sir.
Kevin. Free application for the federal student aid, the FAFSA.
The FAFSA form.
That was another bill as well.
Yeah, we've been working on that for 4 years. Indiana has the lowest FAFSA filing rate in the Midwest and one of the lowest in the country. Research was presented in committee that said that Hoosier families lost out on $65 million of potential student aid for post-secondary education, not just 4-year degrees, but 2-year degrees, certificates, certifications, et cetera. And this bill will provide information to families, give them a hotline, help them get the form filled out, and raise our completion rate, and thus raise the skill set of our adult workforce.
Lots of great perspective.
Yes.
As always, Kevin Brenniger, thank you. We'll see you soon.
My pleasure.
All right.
The Alzheimer's Association is out with its annual report that puts the disease and its numbers under the microscope. It shows an alarming trend in Indiana. Alzheimer's Association Greater Indiana Chapter Communications Director Laura Forbes spoke with Kylie Valletta in the Business of Health.
Well, we talked about the geriatrician shortage in the introduction, but that's just one specialty. So tell us about the shortages that were found in this report in other parts of the workforce.
Yeah, one other area is with home health aides. We're going to need a more than 37% increase by the year 2028. So not very far away, and more Hoosiers, more Americans are choosing home health aides to help with their care when they have dementia. So that is a great need as well.
Right, and like you said, 2028 is not far away at all. It also uncovered this really interesting contrast between Hoosiers who are living in the rural part of the state and those who are living in cities. Explain that.
Yeah, so unfortunately there are a number of health disparities when it comes to dementia care, and this is one of them. So the report found that most physicians, overall primary care physicians, say that they don't have enough specialists in their area, but it was much more pronounced in those rural communities and small towns as compared to large cities and suburbs.
And you mentioned home health aides. Another first in Indiana is there was a bill passed. The governor signed it just days ago, focused on home health aides. Tell us what this bill is and the significance of it.
Yeah, this was a big victory for us and for families facing dementia. So for the first time, this bill, this law, establishes dementia training standards for home health aides. So we're really hopeful that this will help improve care for those patients first and foremost, but also we know that having that dementia training really helps to reduce burnout in those industries as well. So it's really a win-win.
So the presence of Alzheimer's grows each year. This is an annual report. The need for care grows each year. There's no cure. So it feels like a hopeless situation. So what is the silver lining?
Absolutely. So the report did find some good news in that area, and it found that most Americans and most physicians are really hopeful when it comes to future treatments for Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia, and there's really good reason for that. So last year we had the first drug approved that treats the disease itself and not just the symptoms. So that was a huge milestone, and there are more than 100 other disease-modifying treatments that are in various stages of clinical trials and in the approval process. So we have a lot of reason to be hopeful when it comes to that. And in the meantime, you know, the Alzheimer's Association is here to help people who are facing the disease, and we have services available 24/7, completely free of charge. So that's the other piece of good news.
And I know the IU School of Medicine is certainly leading the charge in some of those Alzheimer's progress and treatments.
Yes.
Just a little bit of time left, but we hear about healthcare burnout. Home health aides already have a high turnover rate. There's the great resignation going on. All of these challenges in the market. How do you surmount that and still grow the workforce?
Yeah, so it's going to take a number of approaches, certainly more public policy. So we'll continue to push for public policy changes that will help address some of those issues. And we also need to think about how, in the absence of some of these specialists, we can help ensure that primary care physicians are prepared to discuss the signs and symptoms with their patients, perform cognitive tests, and make those diagnoses as well. So it's sort of a multi-pronged approach.
All right, Laura. Well, thank you for sharing the report with us, and thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you again for having me.
The Indiana State Museum has a new exhibit that highlights the life of champion bicycle racer Marshall Major Taylor. Museum curator of social history Keisha Tandy talked about it with Bill Benner on Inside Indiana Sports.
Tell us, first of all, about Major Taylor. For those who don't know, this was a man, a pioneer well before his time.
Major Taylor, born Marshall Taylor, was born in Indianapolis, November 26, 1878, and he would become a champion cyclist. He would grow up here in Indianapolis. His parents were Gilbert and Sophronia Taylor. His father was a veteran of the United States Civil War, and Taylor would have his first bike as a young person. He would begin as a trick rider, and so he could do tricks, and that caught the attention of a well-known bicycle store here in Indianapolis, Hay and Willits, and he would work there. And then from there, he would work at another store and then catch the attention of a former cyclist by the name of Louis Bertie Munger. And Munger would become a mentor to Taylor. And in fact, when Taylor moved to Worcester, Massachusetts in 1895, he would go with Bertie Munger. He would be a champion cyclist, turning professional in 1896. And by 1898, he would have 7 world records. He was indeed the fastest man on 2 wheels. By 1900, he was an American sprint champion, and he would go overseas beginning in 1901. So he would become an international superstar, becoming the first Black person, the first Black athlete to win a major championship, winning the World 1 Mile in Canada in 1899.
Keisha, tell us about this exhibit that's taking place at the Indiana State Museum from now until October, and includes an actual Peugeot bicycle on loan from the U.S. Cycling Hall of Fame. I mean, that's what an artifact that is.
Yes. So the exhibit allows visitors to learn about the life of Major Taylor here in Indianapolis, and then also as he traveled around the world. We talk about the many obstacles that he faced and then overcame. We talk about what Taylor described as that dreadful monster prejudice that he had to deal with consistently throughout his racing career. We look at some of the people who were his nemesis, people who would try to hinder him as he was racing a cyclist by the name of Floyd McFarland. We talk about the good and the bad. And Taylor kept records of his cycling career. And so we use his scrapbooks to help tell that story. And you can see one of the scrapbooks in the exhibit. We look at him going overseas and the many places where he traveled, but then there are also many interactives where individuals can race against Major Taylor, learn how to fix a flat tire, and those various things. And one of the major artifacts in this exhibit that is on loan to us from the United States Bicycle Hall of Fame in Davis, California, is a bicycle that Major Taylor rode. It is the only bicycle that we know that Major Taylor rode that is still in existence. And it is a great piece. And we include it in an area that highlights just the champion that he was. And so there's 2 trophies there, both from 1901 that he won as he was racing in Europe.
Well, Keisha, we certainly appreciate you coming on the program, telling us about this marvelous exhibit that really identifies a native Hoosier who went on to do remarkable things, have a remarkable life. Thanks for being on the program.
Thank you so much.
You can go way back in time to check out dinosaurs towering inside the Children's Museum of Indianapolis. That's thanks to a huge renovation of the Dinosphere. Museum President and CEO Jennifer Pace Robinson came on the show with more.
You are in a really cool spot there, very colorful. Before we talk about the new Dinosphere, tell us what's behind it, because this is really a sneak peek about what people are going to see.
Right. So right over my shoulder, we have the Mesozoic marine environment. And so you're looking at an Elasmosaurus and a giant sea turtle called an Archelon swimming. Actually, the neck of the Elasmosaur goes all the way under this floor here. It's giant. It's beautiful to see.
Yeah, very colorful indeed. Okay, I think most people know the Dinosphere exhibit, so popular, been there since 2004. This really new version has been several years in the works, though.
Yes. So after we opened in 2004, we brought our advisors from around the world back 10 years later to have a meeting to really show them how it was going. We talked about how popular it was, and we asked them, what should we do next to make it even better? And so they suggested that we need to move into the Jurassic time period and make sure to bring in those giant long-necked dinosaurs that you see in movies like Jurassic Park, and also work to create an ancient ocean scene. And so we've done both.
You know, the amount of work and research that goes into exhibits like this is truly amazing. Talk about that. As I mentioned in the introduction, you had paleontologists out in Wyoming for a long periods of time, right?
Right. So it was 5 years with a team of international advisors, but also our own paleontologist. And I think one of the first bones we dug up was a femur, which is almost as tall as me. So we knew we had some pretty massive specimens. And then the work that it took to pull them out of the ground, prepare them, ship them to Canada to be mounted to these giant steel armatures. And at the same time, our design and exhibit group were building this Jurassic environment. It was so great because we also found plants with the specimens. So that helped us understand what we should add to the Jurassic world.
Well, certainly museums like the Children's Museum are businesses. And this exhibit, I know you feel, is going to really drive a lot of business your way from near and far.
That's right. 90% of our visitors come into Dinosphere. So we wanted to give them a new reason to come back to drive repeat attendance, but also drive membership. So we think this is going to be a winner.
All right, and it opens this weekend at the Children's Museum of Indianapolis. Jennifer Pace Robinson, the president and CEO, thank you so much for taking the time to give us a little sneak peek at what I know is going to be a major attraction and cultural attraction for Indianapolis. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
All right.
And finally this week, could you someday fly nonstop from Indianapolis to Europe? It's not happening now, but it could become a reality sooner than you might think. Leslie Weidenbenner with our partners at the IBJ has details on that story and more.
We all remember Indianapolis had the nonstop flight to Paris that, I think was very popular. It went away. What are the chances we get that route? We get another nonstop to Paris back on the books at Indianapolis International?
Well, airport officials say it's probably not going to happen this year because business travel just hasn't come back in the way that all the airlines and the travel industry generally were hoping. They're looking at 2023 or 2024 to bring that flight back, or maybe to look at doing a London flight instead. There's been talk about that as well. But the goal is to get a flight into Europe back on the books as soon as possible.
Yeah, very interesting. And you mentioned that London flight. I know there's a lot of interest there. But really, Leslie, as you and I were talking before we started the segment here, Indianapolis really interested in several international destinations as potential nonstop routes.
Yeah, we talked to former IEDC chairman director Jim Schelliger, and he told us that there have been discussions about Tel Aviv, about Tokyo, and about Germany. These are all places where a lot of Indiana companies are doing business. One of the interesting things the story talks about is the importance of how much cargo there is to ship and how big of a difference that can make in whether the city can land a flight.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, switching gears now to the invasion and the situation in Ukraine. That having an impact on some Indianapolis area tech companies.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't know that Ukraine is actually a place where lots of tech workers are located. In fact, we talked to Swan Solutions, which is based in Carmel, and that company has 150 of their workers in Ukraine in several locations. So they're in a really interesting balancing act. They're trying to keep business going while also making sure that those folks are safe.
Leslie Weidenbender, as always, some great stuff coming up in the IBJ this weekend. Thanks for joining us. You have a great weekend.
Thanks so much, Gary.
That wraps up this week's Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. Remember, you can find all of this week's TV segments, as well as the top business news from throughout the state at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. While you're there, you can also subscribe to our platform of free e-newsletters. This is Andy Ober for Inside Indiana Business.